Welcome to your Drive Time News Blast. 30 minutes, 45 for patrons, jam-packed with news of the day from a perspective of truth, liberty, and justice. This is Monica Perez.
And I'm Brad Binkley.
Today is Share the Show Tuesday, and I would say if you know anyone who needs a little pick-me-up, who wants real news, who wants a laugh, who wants some company during these corona times, please share the show. Because a show called the Drive Time News Blast needs a little extra push when there's no drive time. And a libertarian show has to suffer from a governmental ban on driving is extra painful. Very hard to take, very hard to take. And I've been talking about some kinds of pushback here. I'm trying to conjure up a 4th of July march on DC. That's my hashtag, 4th of July march on DC. In order to protest that legislation, unprecedented size and scope legislation is being passed while the First Amendment is suspended. And I would say it would make sense to repeal those. I think we should march on it. But I'm beginning to wonder if 4th of July is too soon. I'm looking at the Event 201 stuff, and they said that it looked like the virus was under control for the first 6 months, but then there was a flashpoint, and that would be May, and that is, I think we might still be seeing that.
I completely agree that this is going to continue going on. This type of operation would not be put in place for it to end before it has the true psychological, long-lasting impact. Right now, I think people psychologically would be affected for an extended period of time, but I think ultimately in about a year, people would go back to their normal habits. I think it has to happen again, basically.
So much is right about what you're saying. First of all, people would snap back, whereas the Event 201 thing said it would be a decade of economic pain, societal impacts would last even longer. And you just pointed out something that I had ignored as a sign the last time it happened, but I think you're right. I used to say, so Trump was an extravagant psyop, in my opinion. As soon as he launched his campaign and said that stuff about immigrants, the Kate Steinle psyop happened in San Francisco. I'm the only one who identified that as a psyop, as far as I can remember, really. And it absolutely panned out that it was. And I remember all along saying...
You were very surprisingly accurate on that. It was, and they changed his name.
Well, what's surprising is that the guy got off.
Yeah.
And the person who got him off paid with his life, in my opinion. Yeah. But normally they don't get off. Normally they get railroaded like that. All these FBI stings and everything, they get railroaded. This case just didn't work out that way. And it happens to be one that I identified. But all along I was saying, I think Trump might be the nominee, not all along, but after a while I was like, this is too much of a big psyop for him to just be an also-ran to make Jeb Bush look like the better choice. Like, this psyop is too big. And then he did get the nomination, and I just didn't snap to the fact that the psyop was so damn big that he was going to take it all. That's how big that psyop was. And this psyop is that big, and there is absolutely no way they're putting all this effort into it. Think about what they have got going here. They're not squandering it until everybody's wish list is fulfilled, and even if that includes bankrupting the country.
I think you're exactly right. This is a prime opportunity. Somebody sent us a message, by the way. I wanted to say, because they liked your idea about the 4th of July thing, even if there is an opportunity for it to happen. And they had some ideas about a group, and one of the suggestions they said was American Citizens for the Enactment of the Constitution. ACE, USC was the acronym that they sent.
Well, I think my only hesitation is that I'm afraid that the First Amendment won't be restored by 4th of July. However, if it's not, maybe that's all the more reason to just say, forget it. Let's just march. Let's exercise all of our rights at once and expect them to get out of the way. But it would be very hard to do that, especially since what they have, the stranglehold they have on the people is, and this is why psyops and propaganda, one of the many reasons they're so, so powerful, is the facts do matter. So like I'll always say, you don't have to believe my conspiracy theories, just don't let them take away the Bill of Rights. Don't do it. Stand firm. If you don't want to be a conspiracy theorist, that's fine. But once you realize this stuff is not true, or that they're false flag operations, that they're using events that they have created or are lying about in order to get you to support certain policies, to tolerate certain things, and that if you knew the truth, you would not support those policies, then it matters what the truth is. And as much as I would like to say that we have a responsibility to stand firm in the face of dire fear, people think that this is some kind of unprecedented thing. What you have to remember is we actually have, from sanitation, nutrition, and medicine, the best protections against our biological vulnerabilities that we've ever had in civilization's history, 10,000 years. So why would you think that the fundamental laws that have emerged over that time do not anticipate disease or weren't a consideration? Disease was not a consideration in still moving towards liberty. I mean, that's the thing. So people should stand firm, but they really won't as long as they believe the story. And the story has holes in it, and people are proving it, from the statistics to the empty hospitals movement, which I'll have more to talk about in a second, but you go.
Kissinger had an article in the Wall Street Journal that kind of speaks to that. He's talking about the time to take advantage of things right now with this crisis going on. He said a couple of things that I think might be triggering to you. One of them, he said, the crisis effort, however vast and necessary, must not crowd out the urgent task of launching a parallel enterprise for the transition to the post-coronavirus order.
That has been absolutely huge in the news today. How do you reopen the economy? And that's when it really snapped to me that this was going to have a flashpoint a la Event 201. They said there would be a flashpoint in May. You know, if you follow their lie, they didn't say May, but it was 6 months in. And as they're talking about how to reopen the economy without risking a resurgence of the disease, I realize that we're being set up. So everyone who's pushing this idea of moderation, let people come back slowly if they're not essential, whatever, keep an eye on it. And so they're going to do it slowly. They're not going to have vaccine certificates or Bill Gates's tattoos or ID 2020. They're not going to do it that way because they're going to respect the balance of liberty and security. And then it's going to be a fucking disaster. And they're going to be like, see what happens? See what happens when you respect people's individual liberty? You know, we must have these tattoos. It's like,
then people will ask for the tattoos.
Yes,
the public will demand the tattoos.
Yes, Karen will kick you in the nuts.
It's the engineering
if you try
of consent.
to go to work
Absolutely.
without the tattoo. She's going to be pissed. She's going to be at your workplace. She's going to be yelling in your face.
Going to be protesting, and they give them these protest actions. They talk about that in the crisis communication material. People need to have these actions that you give them, even if they're meaningless. And he admitted that sometimes they're meaningless, even harmful to the people, but they need actions to be given so that they can feel like they are achieving that purpose. And one of those actions is harass people, snitch on people.
And I think one thing that, I don't know if anyone would identify this, but I'm seeing it, is that Karen, you know who Karen is?
Yeah.
Karen, so there's OK Boomer. So the baby boomers like OK Boomer. Roseanne Barr thinks they're trying to eradicate her demographic. OK Boomer. But then there's Karen, who's like the mom who's screaming at the kid in his car with the windows rolled up for driving down the street during, whatever. So this is Karen, who's just in your fucking face. And I say Karen is a soft Democrat. Karen isn't like a MAGA chick with a gun, like that's somebody else. Karen is a soft Democrat, like, well, we need healthcare, we need a safety net, but you should still work hard and get blah, blah, blah. But, and Trump, he is just bad. That kind of thing. The chick next to you at the soccer game is Karen.
Yeah.
So, but your indivisible snap with Linda Sarsour, vote for who we tell you to, those are the hard ones. Those are the hard left. Those are the liberal fascist left. And when you mess with Karen's kids, this is the chick, when Karen snaps, she kills the cheerleading competitor. You know what I mean? Like,
is the mom from Ozark, is she Karen? She kind of seems like Karen with this description.
I stopped watching that when it just got, any kind of like grotesque brutality. I just stop it.
Don't piss off Karen.
Yeah. I mean, she might be, or like even the Breaking Bad wife, which I guess the Ozark wife is the same. They're a different generation. Like there would be a younger version of like the Breaking Bad wife, but she kind of started as Karen. And then, but like these moms, like this is, they really take the kid thing seriously. Like their kids are an extension of their own ego. They are their work and they have to like be that way. So if you fuck with that, they can go out, you'll turn them to be the hard radical. You know, all holds barred. I will gouge your eyes out if you get in my kid's way or whatever. I don't know. I'm not trying to stereotype or generalize or anything. I'm just saying what you're seeing. And this could be a fabricated stereotype. But what I'm saying is that all the tactics they're using on the indivisible, the resistance, the hard left, the kind of unemployed student loan, got time to protest left. Now Karen has time to protest, and you're messing with her kid, and you're getting it to her, and you're threatening her directly through her own mind. Like she's just fucking paranoid about her kids being sick. She only has 2 kids. Like in the old days, mom has 9 kids. You know, she only has 2 fucking kids. They have to count. Sorry, I've been using the F-bomb.
Well, you're fired up. It's all right.
I'm a little fired up.
They go out probably as a task they've given themselves. I bet that there's some Karens going around. I'm going to go out today and I'm going to find some people violating the shelter-in-place order. I'm going to violate the shelter-in-place order because I'm a vigilante, a shelter-in-place vigilante.
I remember when the women's marches, the Me Too marches, the Pussy Hat marches were happening, and a super, super liberal kind of friend/acquaintance of mine still talks to me as if I understand where she's coming from, which I absolutely do not. And she's like, so I just told my husband, you watch the kids. I'm going to the Me Too march. I just had to do it for me. You know what I mean? I just had to do that for me. And I'm like, that's something you think of as doing for you? You know what I'm saying? Like it satisfied her in a deeply, self-defining way. And that was just interesting to me that like she thought of that as something to do for her, not like I need to. Like for me, I've marched against Obamacare, even though I'm a narco-capitalist, but I was like, look, man, we probably have to kick this can because if the economy switches to where it's more than 50% supported by the government, it can never go back from that tipping point. And I kind of have a responsibility to my kids to fight like every revolutionary. I mean, the 20 years of blood of tyrants and patriots, or you're forever kicking the can. You have to be hyper vigilant. I mean, these are our responsibilities as human links in the chain, if that's how you want to think of it. But I never thought of it as doing it for me. I mean, I definitely don't feel like doing that.
Yeah.
Anyway, so sorry I'm ranting, but
No,
I have
you're
so
great.
many big
I love
headlines.
It's
I have
awesome.
huge headlines, but I still these are just insights that as I dabble with the news and stuff, which I don't want to do, but we're kind of in close quarters now.
Uh-huh.
So like anybody who's watching TV, someone puts the news on and I'm just like, don't you know how much I hate the news? And they look at me and they're like, but you're
That's how I am too. Yeah.
I'm just like, I fucking hate it. Please turn it off right now. I have to have a very controlled environment. I can't just have it screaming at me from my now giant TV.
Yeah. Let me give you another Kissinger quote because it goes to what you were saying. He says, we need to develop new techniques and technologies for infection control and commensurate vaccines across large populations. Cities, states, and regions must consistently prepare to protect their people from the pandemics through stockpiling, cooperative planning, and exploration at the frontiers of science. That last part, I think that he's saying tracking apps, 5G, Internet of Things. We need to be able to know where people are all the time. Contact tracing needs to be absolutely easy.
My guess is he didn't even write that. He's a million years old.
It's like he's very old.
Yeah, but even this stuff is straight out of the Event 201 thing. I mean, every one of them, I stopped reading it to everybody in real time because it's just kind of boring to hear. But if you look at what we have, I think I pinned it to the top of the propreport.com. It shows the Event 201 where you can find the footage, where you can find Spiro's montage, where you can find the call to action, where you can find the work we did, WSB shows that probably got us thrown off the air, and our special report on coronavirus, which has it all on Event 201. But these things that you're hearing, these prescriptions, these timelines, everything is straight. I have a hashtag straight out of Event 201, and they're all doing it. And the fact that people won't see it, it's like liberals who used to know that 9/11 was an inside job, and then they stopped knowing that.
It's crazy.
And you call them on it and they're just like, well, that was something else. I don't, don't even get me started on that. It's like, yes, I'm totally want to get you started on that because the whole House house of cards falls down. Like anyone who believes, this is why JFK is so important. Anyone who believes that JFK was not killed by a lone gunman believes that every president since then has engaged in that cover-up. That means the coup was successful and permanent.
They believe what again?
If you believe that JFK was not killed by a lone gunman, like if you believe that JFK was murdered by a conspiracy, you have to believe that LBJ, Obama, Clinton, Carter, Nixon, Reagan, everybody has participated in that cover-up.
Yeah.
That they don't have enough power to go in there and crack the code on that. As president, I would kind of want to know, hey, can I get my head blown off, or it really was that guy? You know, you would want to know. So that's why I feel like anytime there's a coup like that, if it's not exposed, you have to assume the coup was successful and permanent. And that's true for 9/11 and all this stuff. So I'm just saying, if you open your eyes to the facts, like this is cognitive dissonance at its finest. Event 201 is a blueprint for what's happening.
That's interesting there. This is cognitive dissonance, and as easy as a term that is to understand by definition, it's also very easy to ignore it when it's going on within us. And the people who run these operations are well aware of that. They have been doing well over 100 years of psychological research and testing and developing techniques through the Tavistock Institute, using Freudian techniques. Bernays was a major part of this, Walter Lippmann. They've been testing these things since long before World War I, and they understand the fallacies in the human thinking in the brain, and they understand that we are blind to them in the fact that we don't want to recognize the limitations of our own thinking, and we don't want to recognize when we have publicly aligned ourselves a certain way. That's one thing they like to do. They like to get people to make public actions, like the protest actions, and they do that as a psychological commitment to that position, and even doing something differently makes you feel discord internally. And they just have, it's fascinating reading about this research they have, but it's playing humanity like a video game, and people think they're immune to it.
People have been, I like made sure that my Twitter was completely open to anybody who wanted to talk to me, and I keep getting like CC'd on like 20-person threads.
Yeah.
So, and then I can't get through all my things. So sometimes I have to mute it when it has nothing to do with me. But every once in a while, I'll not realize that I just got invited into a cluster, and I'll like respond like, oh, I don't think that's right. You know, not realizing these are a bunch of random people I don't know. And people, they just start screaming at you like, you're a fucking conservative. You can't see one thing. Like, if it's your guy, it's fine. But if it's the other guy, it's not fine. I'm like, I'm definitely not that guy.
I don't know who they're talking to.
For sure, not that guy. But what it shows is, because they themselves are revealing that they are that guy. You know, they're just like on their side. They'll say whatever. They'll scream at people who they don't know, who they think have the wrong label. And it may, like, I'm laughing at some of these people, sophisticated people who have their own platforms. I'm laughing at them, thinking that our problem is R or D or red or blue or our fake ideology. There is no capitalism versus socialism thing. This is just it's a technocracy from the top that now we can see controls the entire world, if not physically through use of force, through the mind. And they really, this two-party PSYOP, boy, they really cracked the code on that. You said they've been working on it for 100 years. They have not come up with something better than that in 100 years.
Absolutely.
Probably 10,000.
Yeah, Harold Laswell lays this out pretty simply in his books from like 1920, Propaganda in World War. 3 parts of every government's war operation, their machine, and that's the economic sanctions, that's the physical war, and propaganda war. And propaganda war is the main one that goes on all the time, around the clock, everywhere.
And it's all they need. I was just thinking about that. I was like, thank God they just gave us a plandemic and not a fucking plague or a real hot war. You know, like they feel like they can accomplish it without killing people. Although I'll tell you, they want to kill people. I mean, Bill Gates wants to kill people. So or he wants to reduce the population. Let's be specific. He wants to reduce the population. If he wants to do that by completely stopping birth rate, I don't know. But I'm a little suspicious that this thing isn't really killing enough people to actually serve the purposes of war. And then this thing with China, I feel like, so I'm worried about the vaccines as being sterilizing or really debilitating. you're really going to have a problem with that, or the 5G maybe is going to have a sterilizing effect, or I don't know what's going to happen with the 5G, but I feel like they're going to just blame that on the after effects of the coronavirus. Yeah. And then the China thing, I feel very strongly that it's a Cold War and not a hot war, that they are colluding to deliver to us, that China and the US are colluding to deliver a Cold War into the minds of the public, and that will result in a lot of like defense spending and all that. But none of this stuff is actually killing people, but it is that the propaganda is enough for all the purposes of war as laid out in the report from Iron Mountain, except for population control.
And this war for 5G, we had this thing with Huawei going on, Huawei, the Chinese tech company, and kind of
which is all about business. It has nothing to do with security. I was really digging into that.
Yeah. It's kind of launched kind of an arms race, so to speak, in developing 5G infrastructure. And then that arms race has been expedited by this coronavirus thing where it's like we have to get everything in place. So that's like the Cold War, the arms race, the result of it developing this technology at a rapid speed and implementing it without people knowing it.
And here's the thing. This is one of my big stories. It ties right into that. Trump came out and he wants a $2 trillion infrastructure plan. He wants to finance it with 50-year infrastructure bonds, which he talked about long before this thing came down. And I believe I caught just a little clip on the radio. I couldn't find it when I looked it up on the internet, but it was from today or yesterday, where he said, this is not the Green New Deal. This is all about jobs, but it will be the Green New Deal. It will be the 5G. It will be electrical and internet infrastructure. It will target rural. I mean, that's stuff that I've seen. They say it's about roads and everything. It'll be electric roads. It'll be roads for driverless cars. It's going to be all of that stuff. It will come down then, and it is, and they are hitting so many agenda items with this thing.
I've seen some articles pop up about internet solutions, like 5G solutions that are going to make it easy for rural areas to get connected. Because as you mentioned a long time ago, they target those rural areas because
they want to get rid of them totally.
Yeah, they're outside that framework of the Borg, and they need them roped in.
And they can grow food.
Yeah.
They have room to grow food.
God forbid.
I mean, I know. It is pretty crazy.
So Boris Johnson...
You absolutely nailed. I don't know if you said it on air or just to me, but I remember when that happened, lots of celebrities are getting this, and you said, "Oh, he might be the sacrificial lamb."
I was worried about him from the day he got it.
So I asked my husband. My husband was like, "Oh yeah, he's really sick." And I said, I said, "Is he?" Because I thought maybe he could just disappear. Like I think Assange, Edward Snowden, Epstein, Weinstein. I think those guys can just kind of fake their own deaths, basically. And I said, "Is he married?" And he's like, "No, he has a girlfriend. And I think she's pregnant." And I was like, well, he might just disappear. He might off himself and go to Epstein's island.
That's possible. I'm worried about him, whether I hope that that's the case. I don't hope something bad happens to him. I hope he's okay.
He's a deep state guy.
I would rather him go off
from
to
the
an
day
island.
he was born.
See, him getting this, as you've pointed out many times, he is like a surrogate representative of Trump. So they reflect him back. So going after him is like going after Trump, and they like to compare them. So
and then
it's
Trump
like a proxy for Trump.
Symbolically die of his own stupidity.
Exactly.
Nice.
And he did boast about it. Boris, before all this happened, he was talking about how he was shaking hands with people. He wasn't worried about it, and then he got sick, and now he's in ICU. So it's really an example. It's pinning the squirrel on the wall, like you say.
I think it's nailing it to a tree. I do say put it on the wall, but I think the squirrel goes on the tree.
My granddad used to do that.
Actually nailed them to the tree?
I think he put it on the side of the house as a warning.
As a warning to other squirrels?
Yeah. I guess that works. I don't know. I'm not sure what I covered of all my notes because we were actually just conversing, so I don't know what headlines I haven't hit yet. But another thing that you really were ahead of is this ventilator thing. I mean, that was just like a coincidence that you happened to, right? I mean, that you just informed us about your experience with ventilators just before everybody else in the world admitted about a
they
week
should have
before.
known.
And then Trump and then Sanjay Gupta was on last night on CNN. Anderson Cooper brought the question up, are they dangerous or whatever? And then Sanjay Gupta says that between 40 and 80% of people never come off of them. And I'm watching that, and we talked about this last week, and I'm going, this guy is the world's most famous doctor/journalist. Why did it take him this long to tell people that? And he's been promoting ventilators all along as a de facto solution.
And this is why this whole idea, which is straight from the left, Saul Alinsky, this do something idea, well, it's better to do something than do nothing, or to have somebody like Bill Gates, who has no medical training, calling the shots on this stuff, to have politicians making these pronouncements because they want money and power. They will do this stuff without, if you could decide whether to have, I mean, they make stuff up to sell, like the stories of the government corruption, of making things that nobody needed, or not even making the stuff and just taking the money. I mean, the incentives for, think about this, everything that we're allowing our governments to do is an act of faith. Is just simply an act of faith. We are assuming that their goals, objectives, and interests are aligned with ours.
That's a great point.
And that they're using their power and their judgment in the same way we would for our benefit. That's why I want to see the stats and the cost-benefit analysis of the policies that they're implementing, because I don't have faith in them, and that's a simple thing to demand, and it's why I want the First Amendment restored before any more legislation.
And the general public also assumes that they are not psychopaths, that they are not Machiavellian, because most people aren't psychopaths. Most people are not Machiavellian. However, those who go to positions of power, that is exactly what they are.
And I think this is like well studied, proven, whatever, but it just stands to reason. I mean, it's just an old adage. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. It's that when they're in, or power corrupts is the first part of that. And the last part is great men are very rarely good men.
Yeah, that's a good one.
So I think that was Lord Acton. So the idea is that yes, bad guys can go in that position, but anybody in that position, it's very hard. It's like Howard Stern said, he's like, no one will ever tell me if these jeans look good or not. I've now reached the point where no one will ever tell me the truth about anything. And when you don't have any feedback, if you don't have the First Amendment to have people on the lawn saying, no, 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 you can do whatever you want. And you will very quickly employ that ethical glass ceiling, which makes you believe that you stop questioning whether your interests are aligned with your constituents when you find an answer that says, sure it is.
Right.
And then they do it. And then you've got things like, we absolutely need 40,000 ventilators. And they're like, well, if you've got 40,000 ventilators and you don't get paid unless you use them, you're going to have 40,000 people on a ventilator, and then your mortality rates quite likely will go up.
Especially if they're not receiving the proper care and they're being isolated, like we talked about. Being isolated and put on a ventilator is... You have to have somebody with you and there to support you and advocate for you, and they're taking that opportunity away from people and possibly putting people on ventilators prematurely. That is what some doctors have come out and kind of blown the whistle on over the past couple of days.
I have a little Epstein tidbit for you.
I did notice some Epstein news.
I'm gonna save that for the Patreon 15. Okay. I want to encourage people to sign up for Patreon, to sign up for to be a patron, subscribe to our stuff. I would say we provide a very, very high quality product for a very reasonable price. $5. That's an extra 15 minutes for every drive time news blast. We're doing parties. We're going to do some deep dives, full interviews. I probably do somebody else's show once a week. I'll make sure you get that in its entirety. And I highly recommend Propaganda Report at Patreon.
I do too. It's 17 cents a day. It's actually a little bit less than that because we add extra content on that. So,
see, I think it's more interesting to say that you're getting more than $1. It costs less than $1 an hour, maybe half that, because we're giving so much extra content.
Yes. Yes. Sorry, I was clicking our outro music there and I clicked the wrong one.
Well, we have to decide how we're going to tier that up and stuff. But I feel like while we're in the coronavirus times, we should keep it cheap, keep it simple, try to let people access it and still pay the bills to the extent we can.
All right. You guys can find your Drive Time News Blast every weekday afternoon at thepropreport.com or your favorite podcasting platform with the Propaganda Report podcast feed. Become a patron. I will continue to say that wrong.
No, you won't. You'll get it right.
It's very confusing with
eventually.
the website at times. And we will talk to you guys tomorrow.